I'm starting a series on 2020 and dealing with various issues around 2020 to 2030 and how it relates to the Bible. Jesus uses an expression about Jerusalem, and he says to Jerusalem, "You did not know the hour of your visitation." So it seems that God expects us to know our times, to know our hour of visitation. So on this basis, it might be beneficial for us to look at 2020 and what it means in terms of the times that we are living in. So where does 2020 come from? What does it mean? And how does it relate to Jesus and to us today? So I believe in the next decade, that is until from 2020 to 2030, there will be unprecedented changes in the world. These changes will have a big effect on some geographical locations and places. Countries might change, borders might change, and it will also have an effect on the way followers follow Jesus. For example, whether we can buy or sell. In this video, let's look at a few time-related issues with regards to Jesus and his future time of visitation. So according to the Gentile calendar, the one we've now got, the date's 2020. And as discerning Christians, we must be careful not to predict what Jesus says, because he says no one knows the day or the hour. And we must also be careful not to systemize shuffled prophecies, which clearly, according to Daniel and John, there are certain things that have not been revealed yet. But although we have this day, we must know the time we're living in. Although Jesus says no one knows the day or the hour, he does want us to be aware of our times. So what was Jesus hinting at? Was he indicating a change of calendar or loss of knowledge or secrecy? Or was he simply stating a practice well known to everyone at the time, which we would now call moon watching? So the original calendars were based on phases of the moon. Two people had to watch, and at the first sign of the new moon, that was the beginning of the month. And no one knew the day or the hour until that moon appeared, and it was a bit inconsistent, sometimes 30, sometimes 31, sometimes 29 days. There was a time when people thought they might have the original calendar, and we've got accounts by Moses where God gave them a calendar starting at the Passover. There were also calendars for the Babylonians and Egyptians. And then, of course, Daniel in the Bible was given a calendar of prophecies of the weeks. And we don't know if that was a heavenly calendar or a calendar related to the one Daniel was using. What we do know about 2020 is that right now in our Gregorian calendar, it's a solar calendar. It's not based on phases of the moon. So we've lost the original time scales. So when Jesus says no one knows the day or the hour, we don't actually know the original time scales. We have literally lost the day and the hour. But he also expects us to know our times. So using our Gregorian calendar and looking at the Bible, what do we see? All right, 2020 is roughly 2,000 years since Jesus was around 20 to 24 years old. And this is where it gets interesting, because in 2026 to 2030 is roughly 2,000 years since Jesus' actual ministry on earth. So this Gregorian calendar, if you like, may be what Jesus referred to when he talked about the times of the Gentiles. So how does it relate to Jesus? By the year 2026 or 2029, it would be 2,000 years since Jesus started his ministry. And around 2030 or 2033, it would be around 2,000 years since he was crucified. Now, before we get too excited, let's realize it's not the first time in history we've had time-related events. It happened in 500 AD and it happened in 1000 AD, the time of the Crusades. And of course, it's happening now. However, if we link some of these prophecies with the signposts Jesus gave, then I consider this decade is going to see many of the next signposts starting to happen. So by 2030, we may recap and say, well, nothing's happened. Why did you make the video? Or we might be very, very well prepared for what does happen. This decade seems to be one of preparation for the rest of the signs and the implementation of certain legislations around the world. We've already seen evolution go right around the world. It's taught everywhere in every school on the planet. The church now in this decade needs to speak to the nations, needs to prepare the nations for what God is going to do. So this gives you some time-related issues with regards to 2020 and Jesus. The next video will deal with signposts. We'll deal with the temple that's about to be reconstructed, Revelation 13:13 and the number 666, the volcanoes and tsunamis predicted by Jesus, the wars and rumors of wars, especially in the Middle East, an anti-family agenda and the depopulation that's happening around the world, and future legislation. Blessings.